What's up everyone? Alex here. 2 weeks before the new year hit, YouTube told me that the channel reached 2 million total views. I had to stop and think for a moment. My videos have been seen 2 million times. Wow. As soon as I found out, I quickly went on the channel's community tab and asked you to post some questions for a future Q&A video celebrating this important occasion. I've compiled all of your questions and read your comments, so let's go answer some questions. Xavier G asks, what is your favorite game of all time and why? It doesn't have to be an RPG, it could be from any genre. That one game to rule them all. Well, that's easy. My favorite game of all time is Persona 4, but I have multiple reasons why. For starters, it not only improved upon the social link system that Persona 3 introduced, but it also felt good to play from beginning to end. So much so, in fact, that I have beaten this game 4 times over the course of the past decade. My other reason for this game being my all-time favorite is because it brought me back to JRPGs in a huge way. Prior to this, I was still dabbling and playing other games in the genre at the time, but my attention was mostly on more mainstream titles like Call of Duty, Gears of War, and the like. This was particularly due to the fact that I didn't agree with the direction that Square Enix was taking with Final Fantasy, which was my favorite JRPG series for a long time. So when I happened upon a copy of Persona 4, it's not hyperbole to say that it made me love JRPGs all over again, and it showed me two things. That while it's great to be aware of mainstream games, it's also doubly important to be aware of the games beyond that, the ones who are trying, in their own way, to build something truly special. Tangentially, it also showed me that not playing every single game in a franchise leads you to appreciate the growth and innovation that a series has gone through over the years. Prior to Persona 4, the last Persona game I played was Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, a game that looked and felt dramatically different. That helped make Persona 4 feel fresh for me, and ever since, I've made it a point to do that for certain games. And in case you're wondering, I'm currently doing that with Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty. Lee Nico asks, how do you manage to actually finish long JRPGs with your age and all? Most can't even sneak in a few hours as they grow older, but you really finish these long masterpieces for review purposes. Well, that's also easy. My full-time job is literally this YouTube channel, which means that spending time during my work week to play games is part of it. That definitely helps a ton. However, I don't spend my entire 40-hour work week playing video games, as you can imagine. So, outside of those hours, I often spend time playing these games with my wife, who also loves video games. Also, because I have a relationship with these companies, I also manage to get games before they're released, which allows me to experience them weeks in advance. But this doesn't make finishing lengthy RPGs any faster or more convenient. I personally don't like rushing through games, as I feel that it compromises my review process. I want to experience games as close to how you all experience it, so it's very important for me to not play through them as fast as possible. If any of my videos have helped you decide on picking up a game you were interested in or have helped you discover games that you wouldn't have heard of otherwise, please consider checking out my Patreon at patreon.com/backlogbattle, where you can vote on upcoming videos, get exclusive behind-the-scenes blog posts about games, as well as see your name at the end of every video. So if you're interested in helping, go check it out. McGenta and Devin had a similar question, so I'll answer them together, but I'll read their questions individually. McGenta writes, what are some games that you feel are underrated? Also, what's your favorite type of candy? Devin writes, what games would you say are must-plays? They don't have to be your favorites, just ones more people should play. Many critics and Western developers often seek out and reward games that are both cutting-edge technologically and try to advance the medium forward. While there's absolutely nothing wrong with the pursuit of innovation, it sometimes conflicts greatly with what gamers actually want, whose underlying concern is that they just want to play great games. It's because of these reasons that I find that most Japanese games are often underrated, as I find that individuals who focus purely on seeking games that always innovate creates a blind spot that makes them gloss over other parts of games that matter. Take the great Ace Attorney Chronicles, for example. From a technological standpoint, it's not really doing anything that pushes technological boundaries, nor does it do anything particularly special in terms of its gameplay. But anyone who has played the game will tell you that it excels in many other aspects, such as its localization, writing, as well as its brilliant cast of characters. Additionally, the internet has allowed all of us to critique anything and everything under the sun. But to be able to recognize the intrinsic value of a game, innovative or not, is something that I believe is a responsibility for any creator who thinks of themselves as a professional game reviewer. Also, this might sound self-serving, but I feel that any game that I choose to feature on the channel are must-plays. Much like you, I don't have much time to spend playing games I don't like. So instead of reviewing every single game that comes out, I take my time to pick and choose which ones I'd like to feature each month. This is because, at the end of the day, I do this because I love playing video games. And even more than that, I love talking about and sharing some incredible games that you might have missed. And to Mick, the answer to your question about my favorite type of candy? It's Ferrero Rocher. Yusuf13 asks, who are in your top 10 badass female characters in video games? This sounds like a video idea. Would you all want to see my picks for this? Post your thoughts in the comments below. Sorry, Yusuf, we'll have to wait and see what the community says for now. 76 Go Long asks, what was the very first video game you remember playing? And/or what was the first video game console you owned in your home? Well, the first video game I remembered playing was Galaga. As far as your question about what was the first video game console I owned in my home, it was the Nintendo Family Computer. But this isn't the first ever video game anything that I had at my house. For that, I'm gonna link you to a video I made to celebrate getting 2,000 subscribers, where I talked about how I got into video games. There's obviously much more to it than that, and this video is kinda old since it's from 2019. And by the way, how time flies. If you're curious what that anything is, click the card shown or follow the link in the description of this video so you can go watch it. Kurducky asks, what do you think about RPG Maker, and did you play some games made with it? I think that RPG Maker is not only a great game-making tool, but it's also great for prototyping. Most developers need to test some game ideas quickly, and RPG Maker has a ton of cool features that let you do this without having to build something from scratch, especially if they're making an RPG. As far as RPG Maker games I've played both Corpse Party and To the Moon, which are two games that I absolutely adore. By the way, did you know that there have been a total of 3 To the Moon games released so far? I didn't know that until I made the 2021 Good Times Supercut of Games for the Backlog Battle Awards. Crazy, isn't it? Momar Bae has multiple questions, so we're gonna kinda spread that out because there is some overlap here. They write, do you plan on making more episodes of the Backlog Battle podcast? Thank you for asking. The Backlog Battle podcast is on hiatus because I want to focus on the main channel a bit more. Things got a bit topsy-turvy towards the end of 2021 due to so many games that I want to cover, which made me think that making videos for the main channel isn't as straightforward or easy as I'd like it to be. That being said, I have at least 3 episodes already recorded for the podcast, and I have a plan to make these releases seasonal, which will allow me to spend more time finding guests, as well as editing the shows that allows me to just release the entire season all at once, or one per week, much like other talk shows. In short, absolutely. This next question is again from Momar, and is similar to the one that Victory0901 posted, so I'll answer them together, but I'll read each question individually. Momar Bae asks, is there a game that everyone seems to like and that you don't, or a game that you like and everyone seems to dislike? Victory0901's question reads, are there any JRPGs that got critical acclaim and you just cannot vibe with them? Actually, there's quite plenty, but I'm very methodical and careful when it comes to talking about them, particularly because I have a very different perspective than most due to my preferences. For example, I like battles in short bursts, so naturally, the tactical turn-based RPG genre is something that I find difficult to enjoy. Unlike most people, however, I do persistently go back to these games to try and see if my opinion has changed over time. This is one way for me to gauge how much I've grown as both a gamer and as a person, and I'm often surprised at how I feel every single time I do this. I've done this exercise for games like Ogre Battle, Final Fantasy Tactics, Valkyria Chronicles, and Vagrant Story, to name a few. But I have to be clear that this isn't just a one and done kind of deal. I do spend a lot of time playing these games and asking myself how I feel about it after a long period of time. And this is a span of several hours, not just 1 hour, 2 hours, or a few minutes. I literally take a mental inventory of how I feel. That's particularly because I love playing games and discovering why people like them, and I'll always give games a second, third, or fourth shot no matter how I felt in the years prior. And I'll do this until I either find that one game in a genre that I truly enjoy immensely, or understand what these games are asking of me. I apologize for this somewhat philosophical answer, but I think it's important for me to share how I feel about this sort of thing rather than merely listing a bunch of games. RickSchofield asks, what will the next generation look like for VR games on the next generation Xbox and PlayStation? Will there be the same leap in visual experience? What will be the big VR game of this year? To be quite honest, I haven't touched my PSVR headset in months, and in the months that followed, there hasn't been any VR games that made me want to hook it back up. While I played incredible games like Tetris Effect, Star Wars Squadrons, and Beat Saber, I still insist that the best VR game I've ever played was Resident Evil 7. And with Village not supporting any headsets, I find that my interest in VR has waned big time. That said, Sony did announce the PSVR 2, and its features are so cool. So much so that many reporters say that it might usher in a new era for VR platforms in general. In my opinion, the PSVR is still the easiest way to get into VR, as I'm the type of gamer who likes playing beefier experiences than, say, playing a round or two of Tetris Effect or Beat Saber on occasion. And a lot of you guys will mention Oculus and how it can function without a computer, but I'd argue that the beefier experiences are only available on the computer because of the limitations of the Oculus headset being played by itself. Like, for example, I don't see a modern game like Resident Evil 7, hypothetically of course, being playable on a standalone Oculus headset. I just don't see that happening. So to answer your question about what the biggest VR game is going to be this year, I'm afraid I have no answer. That said, I will always say to keep an eye out for what Sony announces, as they typically cater to the kinds of experiences that I like, which are ones that bridge the gap between the more common casual experiences in VR with the more hardcore demands of gaming veterans. The type that has a ton of gameplay depth and experiences that you can easily immerse yourself in for hours. SmallTulip writes, I'm curious to know what your dream JRPG would look like. If you could take specific aspects from other games and mash them into one game, what would it take to create that game and why? This is a fantastic question, and this is actually one of the reasons why I had to script this video, because I have a lot of ideas around this. My dream JRPG would probably consist of a mature cast, somewhat like Yakuza Like a Dragon set in a modern world a la Shin Megami Tensei, and something that'll deal with a lot of the issues we're having right now, with a fast expansion of communication and information, as well as mental health. In some ways, SMT5 has elements of what I want, but I don't want to have its gameplay. I'd also like to be incorporating some gimmicks from old SNES titles, with party members leaving and doing their own thing, as well as a battle and progression system that wasn't just based on elemental weaknesses. I'd borrow skill designs based off of Western-made JRPGs like Ruined King that allows players to synergize and create their own parties. I'd even let people share their builds online so that they can try and see how others play the same game, much like how collectible card games can share the types of decks they use. More importantly, I want to build this JRPG with both hardcore fans and adults in mind, with the ability to be able to save everywhere for convenience while creating quality of life features that allow designers to create some truly difficult fights while still appealing to folks who don't have much time to spend in their games. Honestly, talking about all this makes me so excited about the possibilities of the genre. JCK asks, this is a kind of generic question, but what was the first video game you remember falling in love with? Also, do you have any tips for anyone aspiring to pursue YouTube as a career or a serious hobby? released Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! It was the first game that showed me that video games could visibly show emotion and reaction, as well as showed the potential to tell incredible stories. There was also a beauty in its simplicity, and every boxing game that I've ever played, I've always compared it to that game in terms of sheer enjoyment. And I know that's a pretty tall order for any boxing game to meet that kind of standard. As far as advice for aspiring YouTubers, I have several tips. First off, figure out if you're the type of person who does better by reading a script or by using outlines and being spontaneous. It's okay to be one, the other, or both, but knowing which one you think suits you best is important because you can use that knowledge to improve. Secondly, know that you'll have to learn a lot of things in a very short span of time, and that you'll have to keep learning. Making a career out of something means you'll always have to learn something new because your fans will always want something new, so you have to be at the forefront of their expectations. And lastly, talk to your fans, even if there's only a few of them commenting at first. You don't need to make a video that comes out every week, though it does help, but know that your fans want you to talk with them and see what you're up to. It's thanks to them that you'll reach your goals, so take the time to interact with them as much as you're able. I hope these tips help. Momar actually asked a very similar question Jaeger asked, so I'll be answering them together and reading their questions. Momar Bae asks, do you think turn-based battle systems will disappear from AAA JRPGs? Jaeger Lion Hunter asks, what will be the future of JRPGs in the coming decade? Do you see a decline in game releases? What should developers and publishers do to make sure that the JRPG genre won't die in the midst of all the genres overshadowing the market compared to during the golden age of JRPGs back in the PS1 and PS2? Let me be clear here. I don't think turn-based battle systems will disappear at all, though admittedly, I don't consider many of the turn-based JRPGs released recently as AAA titles. That being said, I would urge you not to get hung up on the idea that games need to be AAA in order to be meaningful or profitable. Persona 5, for instance, sold a ton of copies just by doing its own thing and not conforming to how games should attract a wider audience. To that end, I actually think that JRPGs and games of that style will continue to grow over the coming years. As gamers grow older and reflexes wane, there will be a demand for games that cater to a population that has waning eye-hand coordination and are seeking slower strategic experiences. Bringing up Persona 5 as an example once again, the game's battle system manages to still stay turn-based while evoking elements of what makes action games feel action-like, combining a responsive one-touch command system with quick animations that give combat a snappy feel. And keep in mind that turn-based games in general have been evolving. While not a JRPG, XCOM, when it was released years ago, was named Game of the Year by many gamers and outlets, which proves that there is interest in turn-based games. In the coming years, I think that quality of life, game feel, as well as systems that are easy to pick up and play but difficult to master, will be key to the growth of JRPGs. And I actually think that Western developers will play a huge part in making this happen alongside other Japanese developers.
And that's all of the questions you posted. Before I end this video, I just want to take the time to thank you all for being a part of this community. I made Backlog Battle because I wanted to take you on a guided tour through the world of video games, allowing us all to discover new horizons and play new experiences together. I also wanted to showcase games much like how others feature AAA titles, with the highest possible production values, as well as a willingness to dive deeper into the parts of games that not many have dared to do. And we've done exactly that, showcasing games like Zanki Zero, Atelier Ryza, 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, Sakuna of Rise and Ruin, and many, many more. May 2022 marks the 5th anniversary of Backlog Battle, and looking back at the past 5 years, we've accomplished and grown so much. But, as cliche as it may sound, it's only just the beginning. Much like these past 5 years, I'll continue to experiment and find ways to talk about games that'll rekindle your passion for finding new experiences.
I'll keep pushing to learn new skills, to keep improving the quality of my videos and the ways I talk about games that will excite and challenge you. And most of all, I will continue to be in the trenches alongside you as we battle our backlogs together. At any rate, I'm eager to learn what you think. Post your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.